very good morning to you. It's quite a brutal way to come out of your lockdown and your isolation to go straight into that press briefing yesterday. Let's just begin by asking you, Matt Hancock, how are you and what was it like to have COVID-19?
Thanks. Well, it's really good to be back, and I'm feeling fine. I was able to work throughout, but it was a pretty nasty illness, and you know, I had 2 days or so when it was like just razors in your throat, a very, very sore throat. I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, I've lost half a stone, so it was pretty nasty. But the worst bit was on the way down, worrying how bad it would get, because we've all seen how bad it can get. And it seems to be indiscriminate, you know. It takes people younger than me, and so it was worrying. But thankfully, I've come through it, and I'm fine, and I'm fit as a fiddle.
Which is good to hear. You have a young family, of course, Mr. Hancock, and I imagine that they were very worried for you as well. How did they cope, knowing that Dad was so ill?
Well, we were all isolating together, so I probably saw more of the kids than I've seen for a long time, but it's been a worrying time for us all, and then, you know, the hard thing is, in the middle of that, I've also been, you know, on the laptop, working, dialing into the meetings, and trying to drive the effort forward, but I couldn't get out there and communicate about it. Because I was stuck at home.
Stay away, yeah. And I mean, I think there was some relief yesterday when people heard you and saw you, because you came out with, you know, some detail that people have been crying out for, and admitting that, you know, that not everything had gone right, but we are in extraordinary circumstances, and perhaps you won't get everything right in the future either. And I think that people appreciated that from you, actually. Can I just ask about the testing, of course? Boris Johnson had said just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was around the 19th of March perhaps, that, look, 250,000 tests are where we're aiming. Now, 2 weeks later, you said quite clearly you didn't want to overpromise. Was that a comment on the fact that actually Boris Johnson had overpromised then? And how can you tell people now that you can deliver on 100,000 where Boris Johnson couldn't deliver on his promise?
No, I think that's a bit unfair. You're completely right that we will. All that matters is getting this response right, and so, you know, I'll listen to all criticism and try to work out what's fair and what's unfair and what we can do better because of any critique. But the commitment to getting testing to 250,000 a day eventually, it still stands. What I did was I put a very clear timeline on the goal to get to 100,000 a day at the end of this month. And that's going to take a mammoth effort from, of course, Public Health England, who are doing brilliantly, and the NHS, but also private companies, university labs, all the capability that we have as a nation. It's a big national effort.
Mr. Hancock, on exactly that, Dr. Hillary's been in the studio, as I'm sure you know, with us for the whole period of lockdown and before, and he's got an important question he'd like to put to you about exactly that, Hills.
Yes, Matt, I know that you're recruiting a lot of life sciences industries, university labs and private labs as well. Does this mean any deregulation of standards, of personnel, of equipment? Are you happy that the tests are going to be accurate? And what's the ratio of the antibody and the antigen tests of the 100,000 a day going to be?
Well, on the first question, it's really important these tests work. So there is absolutely no lowering of standards. On the contrary, we've already rejected some tests. We've already rejected some tests that aren't good enough, that don't work, because no test is better than a bad test, because a bad test can give you false comfort, you know, that it's OK to go into work if you're a healthcare professional, and when you were actually, you know, still at risk. So we've got to make sure that the tests work, and I will not accept and sign off on tests that don't work. But you're right that, you know, we need a whole load of people to come to the table. and make sure that we can deliver on the goal. We haven't put in a breakdown of the different types of tests. It is a 100,000 goal across the 5 pillars of the testing strategy. I haven't actually penciled any in for the home tests, the antibody tests. And the reason for that is because we so far haven't found one that works. And so I'm not going to pencil any in, but if we do find one that works, obviously that would be great.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been talking about the actuary of tests, which you've been saying all along, so thank you for confirming that.
Matt Hancock, can I just pick up on that? The fact that obviously you've had COVID-19, you had a test and it was positive. And there is this idea being mooted by ministers of issuing immunity certificates. So once you've had it, and it follows on from the test you were talking about, that finger prick test to check whether you are now immune. Do you know yourself do you believe you are now immune and that you can't now transmit it to anybody else?
Yes, I'm grinning because you say ministers are mooting this idea. I think it was me who mooted it. The immunity certificates idea I think is a really smart one. The idea is that for people who have immunity, you can then show that you are immune. But as yet, we're not going to bring them in because we don't know yet that the immunity is strong enough, and there's still more science that needs to be done about the levels of immunity of people after they've had the disease. So it's only when we have the confidence that that's reasonable are we going to do that. So for now, I'm continuing the social distancing, even though my body has beaten this virus. So I almost certainly have the antibodies which are the microbes that defeat the virus. So it's highly likely that I have a good level of immunity. But until the science on that is more certain, and we're doing a whole load of work on that, including with the Public Health England labs at Porton Down, then until we've got through that, then I will continue to behave following the social distancing rules that everybody should be following.
One of the things you said yesterday, as Ranvir mentioned during the briefing, was there has been some criticism of the government, which is justified. I think you'll agree that the rolling out of PPE and the delivery of PPE has been very, very sketchy, very difficult. I know that there's lots coming and the logistics of that is particularly tricky. Just before we came to you to interview you, we were interviewing 2 care workers and a 93-year-old care resident. Both those care workers talking about the fact that there is no PPE in care homes. Care homes are at the front line of this, looking after elderly residents. Many of them having to isolate within the home because the family members can no longer get to those residential care homes, and yet they aren't being provided with any sort of PPE as things stand. Are you going to change that, Matt Hancock, and try and address the issue? Because there is real fear within that industry that they aren't being protected properly.
Yes, it's incredibly important. We have got the stocks of PPE and we have the military working on the rollout, and I want to make sure it gets to all parts. Yesterday we published a new set of guidelines as to what PPE is right in different circumstances, which were upgraded to meet the World Health Organization's standards. That includes care homes. We have managed to get a delivery out to every care setting, but I want to get to the point where we no longer have anyone with a shortage of PPE. And that's something that we've got to keep working on to get right.
Have you got any time scale in mind for that?
I'm sorry, because I'm slightly distracted because I'm being heckled by somebody who's shouting very nice things, but it's still distracting, so I apologise.
It is a strange time for all of us, Matt Hancock, a very strange time.
Matt Hancock is great, which has never happened to me before.
Have you taken your family with you on this live? Are they there somewhere? Maybe it's one of the family members. Can I ask,
That's right. Thanks, Mum. Yeah.
Is there a time frame on that? Because the tangible need for this PPE within care homes is right now, and to say we're trying to look to get it out there is a little bit too vague. As you heard yesterday, everybody appreciated the tangible answers you gave. Everyone appreciated that date that you gave for trying to hit 100,000 tests.
Yeah, Well, we have had a delivery out to every care setting, but clearly people then burn through they use it up. So that is something that's constantly going on, and it's something I'm going to go and work on today.
And can I just ask you about how effective masks are? We're seeing more and more of them on the streets, or, people wearing them when they go shopping. We were told at the beginning of all of this that masks don't really help that much, but now New York City has asked anyone leaving their home to wear a face mask. Germany is advising everyone to wear a face mask. Are we about to see that advice change here too?
Well, I haven't been advised on that, and I haven't been advised that we should do that. I'll follow the scientific advice on that, which was very clear when we went through it at the start. Now, masks are very important to protect healthcare workers who might, have a lot of incoming virus. But that isn't something that we've done here, because we've followed the advice, and we've followed the medical and scientific advice, and the whole basis of our response has been making sure that we follow the science.
OK.
And let's just ask you a final question about Boris Johnson. We saw him out on the steps of Downing Street doing Clap for Carers, as we all were across the nation, and I'm sure you were too. How is he? There is suggestion that he's meant to come out of isolation today, but he's not looking all that healthy. That's suggesting he's still got some symptoms. What's your view on whether we will see him come out of isolation today?
Well, I don't know about his own personal medical condition. What I do know is I've been working with him every single day through this crisis. He's been working incredibly hard, but as you said, he's had the disease, and I think the whole nation hopes that he can get back and get fully recovered as soon as possible.